In a small town in Africa, there lived a man named Joseph. He was a hard-working farmer who grew maize and vegetables in his fields. His wife, Grace, was a kind woman who always stood by his side. Together, they had 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. Their home was simple, made of clay walls and a thatched roof, but it was always filled with love and laughter. Every morning, Joseph would go to the farm while Grace prepared food for the children. In the evenings, the family sat together under a big mango tree outside their house. They shared stories, sang songs, and ate their supper with joy. The children loved their father deeply, and they always waited for him to come home so they could play. Grace was proud of her husband. She believed they were building a strong future for their children. Even though they did not have much money, the family never complained. They valued love, respect, and togetherness more than anything else. Their neighbors admired them, saying that Joseph and Grace were a perfect example of a happy African family. On weekends, Joseph would take his children to the river to fish. The boys would run around excitedly, while the little girl clapped her hands in joy. Grace watched from a distance, smiling as her family laughed and played together. Those moments were precious, and the children felt safe knowing their father and mother were always there for them. Life was not always easy, but the family's bond made every struggle lighter. Grace prayed every night, thanking God for her husband and children. She believed that nothing could break their unity. For her, family was the most important blessing in life. She never imagined that one day, everything would change, and the happiness they enjoyed would be replaced with tears and pain. As time passed, Joseph, who was once a loving husband and caring father, slowly began to change. At first, Grace thought it was just stress from farming and providing for the family. He came home late some nights, looking tired and silent. She asked him gently, "Joseph, are you all right? Did something happen at work?" He only nodded and avoided her eyes, saying, "I am fine." In the beginning, these small changes did not worry Grace too much. She trusted her husband completely. But soon, the changes became clearer. Joseph no longer laughed with his children as he used to. He stopped telling stories in the evenings and sat quietly in the corner instead. When the children asked him to play, he pushed them away with excuses. Grace felt a deep sadness inside her heart. She missed the man she had married, the one who once promised to stay by her side through every struggle. She tried to bring back his smile by preparing his favorite meals and showing him love, but Joseph remained distant. The neighbors also began to notice. "Joseph no longer greets us warmly," one said. "He walks through the village without speaking, as if his mind is far away." Grace heard these whispers and her worry grew stronger. The children, too, felt the difference. They whispered among themselves, wondering why their father no longer hugged them or told them bedtime stories. The little girl cried at night, asking her mother if she had done something wrong. Grace comforted her, saying, "It is not your fault, my child. Your father is just troubled." But inside, her heart was breaking. This was the beginning of a painful change. The man who was once the pillar of their family was slowly pulling away, leaving behind silence, confusion, and sadness in the home. One evening, Grace's heart grew heavy as she noticed Joseph dressing more carefully than usual. He wore his best shirt, combed his hair neatly, and left the house without saying where he was going. Grace watched him disappear into the night, her mind full of questions. Something inside her told her that her husband was hiding a secret. The next day, Grace asked him directly, "Joseph, where did you go last night?" He avoided her eyes and replied sharply, "Why do you ask so many questions? I am free to go where I want." His harsh words shocked her. Joseph had never spoken to her in such a cold way before. As days turned into weeks, Joseph continued leaving the house often, sometimes not returning until late in the night. Rumors began spreading in the village. Grace heard whispers from women at the market. "Joseph is often seen with another woman. He spends his time in her company." At first, Grace refused to believe it. She told herself that people could be lying or jealous of their family. But deep inside, she knew the truth was near. One afternoon, while fetching water from the river, Grace saw Joseph with her own eyes. He was sitting under a tree with a young woman, laughing in a way he no longer laughed at home. The sight pierced her heart like a sharp knife. She stood frozen, unable to move, watching the man she loved share joy with someone else. That night, Grace could not sleep. She cried silently, remembering all the promises Joseph once made. Her chest ached with betrayal, but she stayed strong for her children. She decided to keep the pain inside, not wanting to break their little hearts. The truth was now clear. Joseph was no longer the man she knew. He had given his heart to another, and the foundation of their happy family was beginning to crumble. After weeks of silence and coldness, Joseph finally made a decision that would change the life of his family forever. One evening, he came home with a hard look on his face. Grace, who had been waiting for him with food on the table, felt her heart beat faster. She could sense that something was about to happen. Joseph cleared his throat and spoke without looking at her. "Grace, I can no longer live in this house. I have chosen another path for my life. I will not stay here anymore." His words fell like heavy stones on Grace's heart. She stared at him in shock, unable to believe what she was hearing. "Joseph, what are you saying?" she whispered with tears filling her eyes. "We are your family. What about your children? What about the vows we made?" But Joseph avoided her cries. He packed a small bag with his clothes and important things. The children, who had been playing outside, ran into the house and found their father leaving. "Papa, where are you going?" the eldest son asked, holding his hand. Joseph pulled away gently but firmly, saying, "I have to go. Be strong." The little girl began to cry loudly, clinging to her father's leg. But Joseph removed her small hands and walked out of the door. Grace fell to the ground, her sobs filling the room. She felt abandoned, betrayed, and powerless. That night, Joseph left to marry the other woman, leaving behind the wife who had stood by him in struggles and the children who adored him. The house, once full of laughter, now echoed with sorrow. Grace held her children close and whispered, "Do not cry, my darlings. We will survive. God will give us strength." It was the most painful night of their lives, the night their family was torn apart forever. After Joseph left, Grace's life changed completely. The woman who once depended on her husband's support now had to carry all the burdens alone. Each morning, she woke up before sunrise, tied her baby girl on her back, and went to the farm with her 2 sons. She worked tirelessly under the hot African sun, planting and harvesting crops just to feed her children. Money became a constant problem. There were days when there was no food in the house. Grace would give the little she had to her children and stay hungry herself. At night, she would quietly cry in the dark, making sure her children did not see her tears. She did not want them to lose hope, even though her own heart was breaking. The children also suffered greatly. They missed their father's presence. The little girl often asked, "Mama, when will Papa come back?" Grace had no answer. She would only hug her daughter tightly and say, "One day, my child, everything will be all right." Despite the hardship, Grace never gave up. She took small jobs in the village, washing clothes for neighbors, selling vegetables in the market, and carrying water for others. People admired her strength, saying, "Grace is a strong woman. She fights for her children." But only she knew the pain she carried inside. At night, she prayed for her children's future. She asked God to protect them, guide them, and make them strong despite the absence of their father. Her only dream was to see them educated and successful so they would never suffer the same way she did. Though her body grew tired and her heart carried sorrow, Grace refused to let her children go hungry or lose hope. She became both mother and father, standing as the pillar of the broken family. When Joseph left his wife and children, he believed he had made the right choice. At first, life with his new wife seemed exciting. She was young, cheerful, and made him feel important. Joseph enjoyed the attention and thought he had found true happiness. Together, they moved into a new house in town, far away from his family. For some time, Joseph felt free, as if he had escaped the weight of responsibility. In the beginning, the new wife treated him with care. She cooked his favorite meals, dressed beautifully, and made him feel admired. Joseph started spending his money on her, buying clothes and jewelry. He forgot about the simple joys of sitting with his children under the mango tree, or the comfort of Grace's quiet support. But slowly, the excitement began to fade. The new wife started showing her true nature. She complained often, demanded more money, and compared him to other men. Joseph felt pressure he had never experienced before. He realized that the peace he once had in his old home was gone. At night, he sometimes lay awake, remembering his children's laughter. He saw their little faces in his dreams, calling, "Papa, come back." Guilt began to creep into his heart, but pride stopped him from returning. He told himself, "I made my choice. I cannot go back now." Meanwhile, his new marriage was no longer filled with joy. Arguments became frequent, and Joseph felt trapped. The woman who once made him feel alive now made him feel empty. He looked around his new home, full of fancy things, but it felt cold and lonely. Joseph began to realize a painful truth. He had left behind real love, real family, and real happiness for a temporary pleasure that did not last. As the years passed, the story of Joseph and Grace became well known in their village. People often whispered about how a happy family was broken apart by one man's selfish decision. Joseph, once respected, now walked with his head low. He no longer carried the pride he once had. His new marriage had lost all its sweetness. Arguments and bitterness filled his days, leaving him empty and full of regret. On the other side, Grace and her children struggled, but they also grew stronger. With hard work and faith, she managed to raise them. The boys learned responsibility at a young age, helping their mother in the fields. The little girl grew with courage, always encouraged by Grace's gentle words, "We are stronger together. Never give up." One day, Joseph returned secretly to the village. He saw his children from a distance. They were no longer small, they had grown into young, strong people. But when they saw him, their eyes turned away. The bond that once existed had been broken. They could no longer call him Papa with love, because his absence had left deep scars in their hearts. Grace, too, had changed. She was no longer the woman who begged him to stay. She had built her strength from pain and tears. She greeted him politely but coldly, showing him that his choices had consequences. Joseph realized then that what he lost could never be replaced. Money, new love, and pleasure had blinded him, but true happiness was always in the home he abandoned. The story ends with a powerful lesson: family is the most precious gift. Betrayal may bring temporary joy, but it destroys the future. In African culture, the home is sacred, and once broken, it is never the same again. Joseph's regret was a warning to others: never trade lasting love for passing desire. Dear friends, this story of Joseph and Grace is not just about one family, but about the reality many homes face today. It reminds us that choices have consequences, and that the greatest treasure in life is not wealth or beauty, but the love of family. If this story touched your heart, then remember, many more powerful and emotional stories are waiting for you here. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel so you never miss the next story. Your support gives strength to keep bringing you more real-life lessons and unforgettable tales. Stay with us, because every story has a lesson, and every lesson can change a life.